Last night, we had a great event out at the Fiorella's event space. The Kansas Black Republicans put it on, and they welcomed out Winsome Earle-Sears, the lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia. I guess we'd call it the Commonwealth of Virginia. She came out last night and was right here in Johnson County and did a bang-up job, gave a great speech, had her husband with her here in town, and talked for, I'd say, close to 40 minutes. She probably did 25 to 30 with 10 minutes of Q&A. And there was one moment that really stood out to me as we sit here with 3 weeks to go until election 2024. And this is something that isn't really about the short term. It's more about the long term in terms of how things are changing across American politics. And the question came to her about how to win in places that have become purple. Because Virginia was pretty solid blue, and then Glenn Youngkin came along and won the governor's race 3 years ago, and she won the lieutenant governor's race, and she, Winsome Earle-Sears, as a black woman, is running for governor next year. In Virginia, you only get one term as governor. So she's running for governor next year, and she is considered a rising star in the Republican Party. And when she was talking about and asked about all the losing that has been done around here, Johnson County, 3rd District, places like that, she said, you know, when it comes to how I view that and turning that around, she used an old Nelson Mandela quote, which is, I never lose, I either win or I learn. And I thought to myself, that's a great quote that we can all use every single day in our lives. And you can apply it to politics. You can apply it to your workplace. You can apply it to really anything you do in life. You never lose. You either win or you learn. And whether it's the Republican Party at large on some of the more federal issues or it's here locally, that is a great way to look at it. I think about it from the standpoint of early voting. Republicans now, instead of just crying about losing, are actually like doing the hard work on the ground that Democrats have done for a very long time. They're getting people out to do mail-in voting where it's allowed. They're getting out early voting, right? I'm going to early vote for the first time ever. It starts on the Kansas side on Saturday. So suddenly Republicans are like, okay, if this is how the game is being played, well, let's play the game the most efficient and effective way possible, instead of playing the game how we hoped it would be played. That's what losers do. And Republicans for too long have been complaining and have been losers about it. But now you have a lot of good work that's being done to try to just realize, hey, if this is how the rules are and Democrats are kicking our butts within the rules, then you know what? Let's get serious about this. Let's change the way we go about our business. That's smart. When it comes to the big issues that Republicans lose on, abortion, what does Donald Trump say? Hey, I'm not touching that thing federally. It is being handled at the state level. That is what a lot of pro-life groups and pro-life individuals, myself included, wanted for 50 years. So be happy with that. Handle it at your state level and leave it out of the federal elections. That's a smart play. And I say that as a pro-life person myself. But for some, it's never good enough. Now it's like, well, we wanted 50 years of overturning Roe, but now you also have to do something federally, damn it. Well, no, not now at least. No. If you want to lose elections, that's a great idea. But right now, that is not the play. We got the win that we wanted for 50 years. Enjoy it and handle it at your state levels. And by the way, those who have been in charge of handling the issue at the state level have gotten their clocks cleaned since the overturning of Roe. And now they want to cry and blame Donald Trump about it? Come on, that's a loser mentality. And then you tie it back here to Johnson County or the 3rd District at large, where Sharice Davids obviously is on a roll and is the favorite to beat a guy like Dr. Prasanth Reddy, who was there last night and gave a very solid speech to a group of, I would say, give or take, 250, 300 people who were out there last night at the Fiorella's event space in Overland Park. And I think, okay, what is being done differently than the last 1, 2, 3 cycles where Sharice Davids not only wins, but seemingly keeps winning by bigger margins. And I do see a guy who's got a different strategy, who might have and appears to have more boots on the ground, who has different messaging, and who, yes, I know many of you ask me, when is he going to run ads? When is he going to be on TV? Listen, we have seen people run a lot of ads and lose bigly in this region. It is not all about how often and how much you're on TV. There are ways to win local elections without being the one who's on TV the most. It's possible, or on radio the most. It is possible. And it's possible, too, that when you look at this election, turnout can be much better for Republicans than it was 2 years ago, as Republicans are now the ones who are in many ways more enthusiastic during presidential years, especially with Donald Trump bringing out voters that may not traditionally vote, than Democrats are, than Kamala Harris is. That's why you see her struggling in a lot of these recent polls, and it's also why she's suddenly doing this big media blitz. Kamala Harris is going on Fox News tomorrow. If I told you that a month ago, you would have called me nuts. She's going on with Bret Baier for an interview tomorrow. And if that doesn't signal where this thing is, I don't know what will. Kamala Harris believes, and her campaign believes, that she is losing this election. There's no other conclusion to come to as she goes on Fox News. The last thing I posted last night on X, at Pete Mundo, is a report from Reuters that says Kamala Harris is looking at the possibility of going on with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, the biggest podcaster in the country, a guy who, he's not like a big conservative, I don't believe. I don't. I mean, he's like libertarian. He's kind of liberal on social issues, but he's also certainly far from woke and has a massive male audience, younger male audience. So Kamala Harris's team is thinking about going on the Joe Rogan show, according to a report last night from Reuters. And that tells me all I need to know about where this campaign is at. It does not believe it's in a position, or at least a comfortable position, to get out there and win. So you tie all this together and you say to yourself, from a national perspective, Donald Trump is doing a pretty good job the last couple of weeks staying on message. He's hustling around the swing states. He's staying on message. He's not the story. Kamala Harris right now, as she goes on a media blitz, which if she had done this 2 months ago, she could have worked out the kinks. She could have had a couple of flubs in August when everybody's on vacation, and she would have been a little more, I guess you would say, sharp around the edges in these interviews today if she had gotten the kinks out a month or two ago. The team chose not to do it. So now she goes on The View last week and she says things like, oh my goodness, I don't think I'd do anything different than Joe Biden. And everyone looks at her and says, really? And then she continues to kind of just come across very awkward in a lot of these interviews, and they are not resonating with the American people. And that's why their strategy from the gates to hide her was in hindsight a mistake and could go down as a colossal mistake if this election goes the way of Donald Trump coming up here in just 3 short weeks. 3 weeks from today. Can you believe it? So it was great to see many folks out there last night. Great job by Michael Austin, Fabian Shepard, and the Kansas Black Republicans, Demetri Herbert as well, helping put on that show. And Winsome Earl Sears was absolutely outstanding last night. In the meantime, a lot of people wanted to spend yesterday blasting a guy who's been dead for 500 years. We'll tell you who and why coming up next on KCMO. We're losing. What do we do? All right, well, let's knock Christopher Columbus on Columbus Day. How about that? Yeah. Woo! Said nobody ever. Great idea. So yesterday, of course, Columbus Day comes and goes, and it was used. I didn't see it excessively used to beat up on Italian Americans and Christopher Columbus. But I did see Kamala Harris, who wants to be your next president, make a statement. And clearly, she is not interested in the Italian American vote. And I say that as somebody who has half Italian-American myself. So here is Kamala Harris yesterday.
It is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, as we speak truth about our nation's history. Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
So,
not unburdened by what has been.
Yeah, that's a good point, John. Not unburdened by what has been. As Kamala Harris infamously once said. You know, I sit here and I hear that clip and I think to myself, what's the ultimate goal? The goal is to find victimhood in everything that everybody has ever said. And that's part of the goal. And, you know, that clip from Kamala Harris resurfaced yesterday on Columbus Day, as we are just about 3 weeks to go until the election. I listened to that clip and I hear what Kamala Harris said on this day. I believe that was 2021. And I think to myself, well, that's the real Kamala Harris, right? That's where Kamala Harris continues to struggle. Where Kamala Harris continues to struggle is trying to define who she is and what she believes. Because who she is and what she believes is much more radical and much more liberal than what she's trying to tell you she is these last couple of weeks of the election. And it's something that when you watch clips like that, and it's just like when you go back and you watch Kamala Harris on the campaign trail in 2019, when she ran for president and did not even make it to the first primary. This is somebody who, regardless of how you feel, and even if you're going to vote for her, right? Even if you're going to vote for Kamala Harris coming up here in the next couple of weeks, you have to admit that this is not one of your stronger candidates. Now, I don't know where the strong candidates come from right now. I think there's a real lack of a bench in the party at large, but that's an issue to address down the road. It's stuff like this where people hear her commentary from the past about Columbus and say, what are you doing? What Columbus Day has been for a very long time is simply a source of pride for Italian Americans and honor and celebrate their heritage and their contributions in many ways to the country. And you've got obviously tens of millions of them, more in certain parts of the country than others, but you have a strong Italian American presence here in the Kansas City area that extends obviously from coast to coast. And what they've instead turned it into in large part is a moment to basically just crush America as an idea. Columbus didn't obviously discover the nation. I mean, he came over here and, ended up here with his boats.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But he wasn't one of the founding fathers, right? That was 300 years later, John.
And when we get into this United States thing, Columbus kind of landed south of here.
Yeah.
If he had a GPS, it would have been going, recalculating.
Well, that's where
it's a big umbrella to sweep this under, isn't it?
It just turns into a chance to rip America.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Even if you're a couple of countries off.
Yeah. Even if you're hundreds of miles away, technically, on some little island in what is not America, it doesn't matter. It's the idea.
Yeah.
If it's an opportunity to crush the idea of Western civilization, they will do it.
Well, they're taking on an icon of America.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly right.
George Washington didn't chop down a cherry tree. These kinds of things,
Well, I do want to find out. I have to ask Claire when I get home today, because she was at school yesterday. if there was any Columbus references. I just want to know if she knows the name Christopher Columbus. Mark, can you speak to your daughters? Do you think they are familiar with Christopher Columbus?
I know they have in the past. I didn't ask about this year.
Well, okay. But they have done Columbus history in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. And you feel like they might have a thing or two to say about Columbus.
They know the whole 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Okay. All right. They haven't rechanged that with like any kind of alleged, I don't know. Yeah, indigenous hatred or something like that?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. That's a good sign.
Did take it off the ACT test.
Oh, they did. Okay. That's good to know.
Just, right?
No. You never know anymore what they're taking off these tests, what they're adding to them.
There's nothing much on the ACT test.
Yeah, exactly.
Put your name in.
BLM's on there. Columbus is off. That's as much as I know, based on what I'm hearing from the people in the know that are still doing that stuff. But this is simply a moment to just give the Italian Americans, a chance to celebrate their own culture. And I did reach out to our buddy Joe Piscopo yesterday. They're in New York and with Saturday Night Live fame. Joe is a friend of the show. He loves Kansas City. So I sent him a text, John. I said, hey, Joe, can we get you on the show today, meaning Tuesday? Now, he's on in the mornings just like I am, so he would have had to recorded something, or he's potentially able to come on today live at 9 o'clock. I said, hey, Joe, can we get you on tomorrow, talk about Kamala and talk about Columbus and everything else? And he texts me back in all caps, Pete, I'm on a live parade broadcast. And I'm like, that is the greatest Joe Piscopo answer. Oh, he's participating, all right.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, Italian Americans are so ubiquitous with New York and that kind of thing, but they weren't exactly welcomed here when they arrived.
Well, they were second-class citizens.
We don't mention that, do we?
You're right. They were absolutely second-class citizens in this country. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they were treated like blacks were treated in America, but they were not well treated when they first showed up in this country. And we technically have never had an Italian-American president either. Ron DeSantis wanted to be that guy. It's not going to work out, at least not this time around. But just note that as well. But because the skin pigmentation is of a certain color that's not conducive for the Democratic Party's themes, well, they don't much care. 2020 vibes here at 7:05 on a Tuesday. Good morning. It's great to be here on KCMO. And no, I don't mean that from the standpoint of the outcome of what's going to happen here. I mean, I saw this letter that just dropped this morning, or I guess it was late last night. I was out at that Winsome Sears event with the Kansas Black Republicans. They did a great job hosting the Virginia lieutenant governor, who is considered a rising star in American politics. Saw about 300 of you out there for just an outstanding event that was put on by that crew. But this came down last night, and I saw it first thing this morning. More than 230 doctors, headline from CBS News, more than 230 doctors and healthcare providers call on Donald Trump to release medical records. And the first thing I thought about when I saw this headline was 4 years ago when this headline was run. Hundreds of national security officials endorse Joe Biden. Remember that? Joe Biden endorsed, here's the NPR headline, nearly 500 national security experts endorse Joe Biden for president. They find all these people, and you couldn't pick any of them out of a lineup. You don't know who any of them are, but it's just meant to really impress you with the headline itself. Oh, wow, hundreds of national security experts endorse Joe Biden for president? They write back in 2020. By the way, I don't think there's actually 500 national security experts in the country. I don't think that exists. There's like a handful of people, like Mike Pompeo.
My application's pending.
Yeah, John's hanging in there. He's just waiting for his next gig there in D.C. in the Beltway to be a national security expert. And then we'll bring him back on the show as a guest, and we'll introduce him. John Anthony, national security expert on the line on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. They just put these big numbers out there, and they find these people, and they're like, hey, you want to be on the list? You want to sign your name on this? Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Yeah. I don't like Trump, sure.
Well, and it goes to ego, and they'll say, is Rex Archer on there? Then I better get on there, right? Something like that.
By the way, we're getting close, man.
If so-and-so's on there.
Boy, I love Thanksgiving.
It's only, a month and a half? Oh, I love Thanksgiving, said the old slob, former Kansas City health director.
Those same doctors waived the Hippocratic Oath, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It's a good point.
Why would they be urging someone to release those?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's running for president. I get that part.
But still.
In principle,
this
doesn't matter what
comical.
your job is.
This is comical.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not even justify these clowns. 230 doctors and healthcare providers call on Trump to release their medical records.
Not 229 or 231.
No. 230. Get the number right. So CBS writes here, they're calling on Donald Trump to release his medical records, arguing he should be transparent about his health given his advancing age. So can I just ask where these 230 doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals were as we watched the current president of the United States fumble and mumble and fail and embarrass the nation in front of our very eyes?
Well, they were composing the letter for Trump.
I guess you're right. Good point.
Took a while.
Yeah, it took them a little bit.
A couple of drafts,
Yeah.
approvals, send that around. You check your email.
Yeah. Where were they when Trump was out there saying that Biden needed to take a cognitive test? Remember that? Biden would release like his physical health records, which physically he was for the most part okay. I mean, I see him in his little Speedo there, his little bathing suit on the beach, carrying his little beach chair in Delaware, and physically he looks all right for a guy his age. But the question was always about where he was mentally, his cognitive ability.
Luckily, there were no cycling scores on that.
He wasn't falling off the bike at that point. And these people were nowhere to be found, amazingly. But now this letter, organized yesterday by the group Doctors for Harris, which just... Everyone's got a group now,
We got
huh?
white doctors for Harris
Yeah.
anywhere?
White
male
dude?
doctor? Yeah.
No, dudes. White dudes.
White dude doctors.
White dude doctors for... I mean, come on. Everyone's got a group. What can I be? I got to think of a group.
We're all unified for Harris.
Yeah, that's right. Left-handed
Yeah.
radio hosts in Kansas City. Mark, what do you got for me? You got a group name for me here, brother?
I was Gamblers for Harris.
Yeah, that's what you could be, degenerate
wagers.
gamblers for Kamala Harris? Sure. The letter was organized by the group Doctors for Harris, which is unaffiliated with the Harris campaign.
Huh.
Is it really? The doctors and nurses note that presidential candidates have traditionally disclosed their medical records, including John McCain, who did so during his 2008 presidential campaign. In his 2020 race against Joe Biden, Trump released results of his physical in June before Election Day. The letter noted that absent detailed health records, we are left to extrapolate from public appearances. The doctors wrote, as we all age, we lose sharpness and revert to basic instincts. We are seeing that from Trump, as he uses his rallies and appearances to ramble, meander, and crudely lash out at his many perceived grievances. Well, trust me, I'm not a fan of how Donald Trump handles all of his grievances, but Trump's been doing that for like decades. Okay? It's nothing new
Part
for the
and
guy.
parcel, right?
Hey, like, he was doing it in his 50s and then his 60s, and now he's
Doing it in junior high.
Exactly. Trump hit puberty, and he's been handling his grievances the same way. Like, and I'm not a fan of it all the time, but the notion that, Trump just like hit the age of 78 and bam, I mean, he's just taking out his grievances at his rallies. I'm pretty sure since he got into American politics, he's been doing that. So this letter comes, writes CBS News, as Harris has been putting pressure on Trump to release his medical records, with her campaign viewing their contrast in age as a salient argument. So over the weekend, Kamala Harris built up this whole thing about how, I'm young, Trump's old, and he's got to release his medical records. It reeked of desperation, and it reeks of even more desperation today. And it's amazing how Kamala Harris just brought out this attack line like 3 days ago, and now, a couple of days later, they've got 230 doctors, healthcare professionals, who magically are like, Trump's got to release his medical records. By the way, I'd be curious to know how these medical professionals feel about children transitioning to different genders. That'll tell me a lot about who these medical professionals are and how credible they are in the work that they apparently do on a daily basis.
The guys that deliver oxygen tanks to people at home are medical professionals, aren't they?
I guess.
So-
I don't know how they're defining medical
Well, that's
professional.
what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
The implication is they're all doctors, obviously. But
Something tells me they're not all
probably
MDs.
not, since they use the bigger umbrella.
Or maybe they're all woke PhDs, right? They call
Well, there you
themselves
go.
doctors.
Could be that.
It could be. Who knows? So this is the 2020 playbook all over again. Get random no-name people to sign some letter, look like you've got power in numbers. And the best thing that Trump could do in this case is ignore it. Just tell me if you genuinely care. If you're a Donald Trump voter, do you genuinely care about his medical records? Is that in any way something that could change your vote, given the stark differences between these two candidates? I don't know how it possibly could. In fact, somebody texted in a great point. They texted in and they said, Pete, if Trump was in worse health than we thought, I'd be more likely to vote for him because I like J.D. Vance better than him anyway. Well, that's an interesting point, right? You're not, at this point, voting for either of these candidates based on health or age. Donald Trump, when it comes to his mental acuity, shows that he still can do the job. He still has incredible energy. He still is able to go out there, and while I wish he would give more details on some of his policies, he's still out there and, in large part, able to articulate the bigger ideas. He's not an in-the-weeds guy, never has been. The big ideas, fine. That's what CEOs do. It's very different from wondering whether or not Joe Biden can execute a press conference. Trump might have high cholesterol. Yeah, the guy does enjoy his pizza and hamburgers and French fries.
We have pizzas, we have 300 hamburgers, many French fries.
But that is not going to be the thing that sways this election. And for Kamala Harris and the campaign to break this out, man, that tells me that with 3 weeks to go, they do not like the position that they're in. 913-408-7957. You tell me, though, if you actually care about this or not. Bill O'Reilly's Morning Update is next. We've got more with you coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. And as always, streaming at KCMOTalkRadio.com. I've got the list of doctors here, by the way. I just spent the last couple of minutes during the break going through the list of 230 doctors who came out in a letter that was obtained by CBS News and said that Donald Trump must release his medical records right now to the American people. You know, there's not a single poll I've seen that suggests the American people are concerned about Donald Trump's health. So it's a made-up narrative that the Kamala Harris campaign is using, and then they're putting the names of 230 doctors on this list. I wish I could do some more deep dives into who these doctors are. But anyway, I know you're all wondering. I did not see big, sexy Rex Archer.
Thanksgiving. Boy, I love Thanksgiving.
I love Thanksgiving.
I'd like to see the list of names compared to any other list of names. It's like Mad Magazine, where it's just the same list of people.
Well, yeah, it could be. These people were national security experts 4 years ago, and now they're doctors.
Slobotnik. And you're like, what? Dr. Joe Slobotnik. General Joe Slobotnik.
We got 230 Dr. Jill Biden sitting on the list, right? Oh, my goodness. 230 medical professionals come out and release a letter saying that Donald Trump must release his medical records, arguing he should be transparent about his health given his advanced age. You know, we just watched a guy in the White House for 4 years cognitively decline in front of our eyes. And now the same people who were like, nothing to see here until June 27th and that debate that took place now suddenly care about the physical well-being, in this case, of Donald Trump. I don't know. The guy got shot in the ear and he seems to be doing okay. I'm willing to take my chances there and see how it plays out. And also trust the VP pick. Mike's in Smithville on KCMO. What's up, Mike?
Yeah, you missed came out with my line, Pete. There. I mean, why are these guys about the guy that's currently got his finger on the button? How come we don't care about the guy that's been in there and telling us nothing's problem, everything's okay, and I'm super, and all of a sudden now the guy that's running around all over the country doing rallies everywhere on full display, is doing great. The other thing is that with the homeless piece, I appreciate that because I worked in the homeless shelter, volunteered work in Tampa, Florida, and worked both in regular shelters and what they call a damp shelter where they let you come in if you're drunk or high. And the ones that are on the damp shelter side and this one that you're talking about that they want to take an old hotel, this is all about a grift. They got a place that they don't have any nobody renting in, and they know that they can skim by opening up a damp shelter, and it's just going to draw people. The ones that are run by the good people, a lot of Christian-based ones and other things, they're building self-reliance. Their intent is to stop you from needing them. Mm-hmm. They want you to have some self-sufficiency.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. Hey, Mike, I don't like to hit too many topics at once there, man. The audience is turning over quickly, but I do appreciate your thoughts, and thank you very much for that. He's referring to a topic that we were talking about last hour regarding homeless folks in Kansas City. We'll get to more of that throughout the morning here on KCMO. But, yeah, the doctor's letter, if these same 230 doctors came out on June 28th and said, hey, you know what, when it comes to the president's ability to do his or her job, we think Joe Biden, based on what we saw, based on our expertise as doctors, is no longer up to the task. And if that's the case, then you've got to also lobby for the 25th Amendment. And nobody has done that, amazingly. Like, Joe Biden still is the president. He will be until January. And everyone more or less agrees he's not up for the job, but no one's like he should be out of the job right now. He just should be out of the job in January or something. Let's go to Johnny's in Topeka. John, you're next up on KCMO. Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. Did you know that 50% of all doctors graduated in the lower half of their graduating class? And I bet these guys were amongst the top.
Very good. Very good. I like that.
Well, at this point, I'm not voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. I'm voting for an ideology that I believe is heaven sent to save this country through Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the Republican Party versus an ideology that's hell-bent on destroying this country with Harris, Biden, and the Democrats and the way they're taking us and trying to destroy us through economic and just every social way that they can to destroy us and take us from the country that we are to the country that they envision, which is just death and destruction. And also President Reagan had said it best when he said that he didn't want to take into consideration age into the election because he didn't want to capitalize on his opponent's youth and inexperience. And that was the greatest line that I heard. I was like, wow, that is great. That's a good kick in the shin,
Yes, that was absolutely outstanding. One of Reagan's many great lines. That Donald Trump doesn't have the same approach, obviously. So Trump's never going to be able to turn a line. Trump can turn a line, but it's not going to be like that with that kind of twinkle in his eyes where he kind of, insults his opponent with a smile on his face. Trump doesn't insult someone with a smile on his face. He just beats you over the head with a bat. But J.D. Vance can do that very well. He's been very effective on that front. Yesterday, we had Matt Chateau on. He is the owner of Betty Ray's. And he had his River Market location broken into once again, second time in the last 3 weeks. And to his credit, he's not afraid to talk about it. He came on this show. He was not happy. We had him for the first interview in the wake of the second break-in. I found it on Instagram. Actually, Kate found it on Instagram and showed me. And I'm like, man, this poor guy's dealing with this again. And he's not alone in having a business in Kansas City that's been broken into multiple times at some point in the last few months. In his case, it happened multiple times in the last couple of weeks. So he came on the show, and one of the big criticisms that Matt Chateau had yesterday was that this whole pomp and circumstance of this back-to-business plan where Kansas City was going to reimburse businesses $3,000 a pop who had been burglarized or $5,000 a pop on any security updates that they make. No one knows, according to Matt Chateau at the city level, nobody knows how this thing is going to be rolled out. And that was a big critique that he had yesterday here on KCMO.
We have a desire, and we're looking forward to getting new doors throughout the entire building, and also some other security measures. But it goes to the back to business conversation that the mayor and I have had, and I think that it's foolish, and I think it's a waste of time based upon it's a reactive policy to basically provide welfare to those that are stealing because we're not making them stop. But at the end of the day, we reached out to the city after that back to business program got the great political publicity that they were hoping for, and said, hey, what do we need to do to apply for this? And it's probably, been 3 weeks, maybe going on 4. And nobody at the city knows anything about what it is, because our thing is we don't want to spend money on things that are tens of thousands of dollars if the city has to first approve the purchases before there's possibility of reimbursement or anything else. So we'll want to do it right.
So that was Matt Chateau yesterday right here on KCMO Talk Radio. And I'm listening to him, and I'm like, how bad is that? I mean, this whole back to business thing was rolled out a couple of weeks ago. It got passed by the city council. The media covers it. Rah, rah, yeah, this is doing great. But as Matt points out, it's a reactive policy, right? It's like, boy, sorry about that break-in. Here's $3,000. Okay, thanks. How about you just stop the criminals, or you have some policies in place that help prevent crime, because this isn't happening in other parts of the metro. It seems like it's happening ad nauseum in Kansas City, Missouri proper. So how about, like, you do the things that need to be done to prevent crime, and then you don't have to give me a $3,000 check because my place got robbed for the second time in the last 3 weeks, right? How about we do that for a second? So he also posted on his LinkedIn page about this, and it got dozens, if not hundreds, of comments. And Quentin Lucas was responding to some of these comments here over the last bunch of days, including Matt following up on it here this week after his most recent break-in. And you can see the entire thread on the LinkedIn account of Matt Chateau, and I'll share that on social media because local media's been picking this up. But one good piece of news is that the application for the Back to Business Fund is opening up today. So if you go to kcmo.gov and you are a business that has been burglarized, I mean, how sad is this to say? But if you're a business that has been burglarized, the Back to Business Application Fund opens up today. Now, how long it takes to get approved for this? Who knows, right? I mean, think about it. If you're a business and you're like, okay, I've just been broken into for the second time in 3 weeks. I got to put in new doors. I got to put in a new security system. It's going to cost me $15,000, $20,000, whatever the number might be. And I'm hoping I can get $5,000 back from the city. Well, you think you're going to know by next week? Come on. You kidding me? No way in heck, John, you're going to know by next week.
Well, the guys from Tyler Technology came around and just said you need a screen door. Yeah. So you're getting a screen door.
Yeah, Tyler Technologies. Those are the hucksters that screwed up the whole Jackson County assessment, for those that don't know.
Oh, we came by and assessed your place, huh?
Yeah, we drove by and waved as we, kept on going through the neighborhood.
Yeah,
so,
we got that from NASA. We got the shots from NASA.
So, Quentin Lucas, you'll see on the LinkedIn page, is doing his best to try to basically defend the city. And I get it. That's his job. He's the mayor. But he's also overseeing all of this at a time when the city's dealt with record levels of homicides the last couple of years. And now you have small business owners who, for the most part, have kept their mouths shut for far too long, I would add, are suddenly sitting there and saying, enough's enough. Now, one of the comments on LinkedIn from the mayor stood out to me. And it said here, quote, "The prosecutor, Jean Peters Baker, gets much flack, but I've seen no rule or statement from her office that says she will not prosecute property crime." Let's stop right there. Even bad prosecutors, and unfortunately we know them all too well on both sides of the state of Missouri, do not brag or signal what they're not going to do. They just don't do it. They just don't do it. They don't explicitly say, we will not prosecute this, we will not prosecute that. But please go talk to a law enforcement officer in this community and ask them what they think this prosecutor will prosecute and what her office will prosecute. Ask them how much confidence they have in a prosecutor's office pursuing things like low-level property crimes in this town. And criminals, as a result, are not stupid. There's a reason that Betty Ray's in Olathe off of Ridgeview is not getting broken into twice in the last 3 weeks. There's a reason for that. And don't tell me there aren't people who would want to do it. There are. But you know what? Many criminals who have access to vehicles, I mean, it's not like these are just homeless people hanging out in River Market who are doing this stuff. They have access to vehicles. There's a reason they're looking in the River Market and they're not looking out on Ridgeview and Olathe. And that's because, in part, between law enforcement and also you throw in the fact that Steve Howe is a damn good DA in Johnson County who needs to be reelected, by the way. They're not putting up with that. They're not putting up with it like they are on the other side of the state line. And in fact, Steve Howe, who was out with us for a Politics and a Pint a couple of weeks ago, we had a great time in North Overland Park 2 weeks ago now? A week ago? I don't know. These weeks are rolling right into each other. He told a story about arresting a guy from KCMO and charging him and hitting him hard and the whole thing. And the guy said to him, I'm paraphrasing here, but geez, I shouldn't have come over to this side of the state line. Yeah, you shouldn't have. Because at least for now, at least as long as we have competent DAs and solid police departments and strong prosecutors and people who aren't going to put up with this for now, we'll see if people like County Commission Chairman get his way in this community going forward. That may change. But for now, at least, people aren't putting up with it. And on the other side, what you are seeing is the criminals realizing that, you know what? Even if I get caught, are they really going to come after me? It's worth the risk. And that's how you end up with the situation you end up with right now in Jackson County. It was Sunday morning in Kansas City, Missouri, when this near tragedy, I mean, it still was a terrible story, but it could have been much worse, ended up taking place. First Church of the Nazarene, 118th and State Line Road, Sunday morning at about 11 o'clock. Officers from KCMO were dispatched to a reported cutting Sunday morning. Officers located a man suffering from a stab wound to his chest and found several members of the church on top of Jared A. Hill, who was taken into custody and now is being charged and faces first-degree assault and armed criminal action. While Hill was being placed into a transport wagon, he also attempted to grab a police officer's gun. Witnesses at the scene told police it appeared Hill had pitched a tent nearby and was upset that someone had spray painted it. The stabbing victim attempted to help Hill, while other members of the church told him to leave, or else they would call the police. At that time, Hill put the victim, who he was standing next to, into a headlock and pulled out a knife. Court records said Hill then stabbed the man in the chest. They struggled over the knife, and other church members helped hold Hill down until police arrived. An investigation revealed a video from the church corroborated victim and witness accounts of the crime. So this happens on Sunday morning, and yesterday you get this front page story at the Kansas City Star talking about how Kansas City ranked worse for handling chronic homelessness out of all the major U.S. cities. Says here at 95.7%, the Kansas City area has the highest percentage of people experiencing chronic homelessness living unsheltered in any major U.S. city. This is according to a study done by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The rate is worse than Los Angeles, which ranks second at 86.6%. Now, the premise there, the goal there of the piece in the Kansas City Star is obvious. The goal of the piece is basically say, hey, the government has to do more. The government needs to be the one that's solving the homeless issue. Well, what they don't realize, or what they don't care to realize, is that if that was the case, California would have it under control. Here's some data. California spent the equivalent, and I'm reading this from the Hoover Institute. California spent the equivalent of about $160,000 per person over the last 5 years on homeless individuals. $24 billion on homelessness since 2019 in the state of California. $24 billion. That's with a B. Not an M, a B. $24 billion. So some people are going to say, see, this is why we got to spend money. This is why the government's got to get involved, because we've got homeless people walking into churches and stabbing people. And if that guy wasn't living in a tent, oh, this would have been avoidable. If only the government built some more shelters. We have shelters that are run by great organizations all over Kansas City. We have had many named today on this show. Some are more rehab centers than they are homeless shelters, but you think of great organizations like City Union Mission. Christian-based operation that's never taken a dollar in public funds. You have places like Welcome House. You have outstanding organizations all over Kansas City doing the good work that needs to be done every day. But you can only help people who want to be helped. If a low barrier shelter, which people have advocated for here in Johnson County and across the region, is basically a place for drug addicts and other addicts to put a roof over their heads for a night and then go back to the lifestyle every single day, that doesn't help anybody. And there's nothing to suggest it's going to prevent crime. Los Angeles, as I just noted, spent $24 billion the last few years on homelessness. And what's it getting them? They have 30,000 people on the streets, per the Kansas City Star article, on a daily basis. The government's not fixing this. I wish it was actually that easy. It would be easy if we knew that was really an answer where, hey, if the government puts in a little bit of money, everyone's living great. High on the hog, no homelessness, utopia, the whole thing. History doesn't bear that out. Recent history, decades-long history, doesn't bear that out. Because in the end, we're human beings. We're going to make our own choices and decisions. And you want people to get themselves help. You pray for them to get themselves help. But in the end, they have to want to get themselves help. The government can't force that on people. Trisha's in Lee Summit. She is actually a member of that church. Trisha, good morning. Thank you for checking in. And how is everything going there at the First Church of the Nazarene at 118th and State Line?
Good morning. It's a great church, and everybody's doing really well, and the victim is doing really well. So that's really good news.
What happened there on Sunday? What did you see?
Well, what happened was this man, we didn't know. He had set up a tent right by the children's playground on the church property. He was accusing people of spray painting the tent, which we don't even know what he's talking about because no one had done that. But he goes upstairs, and we have a little bit of food set out for new people coming to the church. So he got some food, and they were keeping an eye on him, but they didn't want to cause any problems. If he was just going to get some food and leave, they were going to let him do that. And then our associate pastor talked to him, welcomed to the church, and asked him a few questions. And he went downstairs, and then he started wandering into an area that he wasn't supposed to be, or no one is supposed to be in the church in the back area. So my sister called the emergency response team, and my husband's part of that team. It's funny we're talking about California because we moved here from San Diego, and he was a police officer there. So he worked with homeless every day. So long story short, they confronted him and told him that he had to leave. He couldn't be in that area of the church. He asked if he could fill up a water bottle, and they let him do that. And then they escorted him outside, and right outside the doors, he also asked if they knew where the closest laundromat was. Well, my husband was thinking this is going on too far. He needs to just leave. But the nice man who's head of the emergency response team, who was also the victim, looked up a laundromat for him and gave him the address, and then he asked if he could call him a taxi. Well, when he was looking up a taxi number on the phone, that's when the man grabbed him and stabbed him several times really fast. And my husband and his friend Greg, who are also on the emergency response team, grabbed them, and they all went down on the ground, and they were he had the knife to Jim's throat, and the guy was so strong. I don't know if he was on something, but two men could not pry his hand away from Jim's throat, and he probably had the knife at his throat for more than 5 minutes. So he finally got tired, tried to switch the knife to the other hand, and that's when they were able to get the knife away from him. But it went on for several minutes, and he was trying to cut Jim's throat, and Jim had his fingers between the knife and his throat, so his fingers got cut pretty bad too. But it was a horrible situation, and my poor sister saw the whole thing. So anyway, he is going to be okay, but it was quite an event.
Well,
you don't expect to happen in that area of town normally. So.
No, and certainly not, on a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. My goodness. Well, Tricia, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing some details, and we'll be praying for all you guys, and hopefully things continue to get better for the victim and everybody else involved.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. I mean, gosh. Imagine dealing with that. 9:06. Listen, the Johnson County Commission is something that, if you want to get some more common sense into the county, it starts with the county commission. You heard Mark Hamill say the Johnson County budget has gone in 4 years from 1.2 to 1.8 billion. I don't care what your political leanings are. I know a lot of people just vote down straight ticket. They don't care. They're a D, they're an R. They just vote up and down the ticket for those people based on that party. Please justify a 47% increase in the Johnson County budget the last few years. Please somehow figure out a way to justify that and tell me that's a proper use of the people's money. And by the way, the services aren't getting better. Now, I wouldn't say they're getting worse, but you're not getting more for your money. You're just giving more of it away. And even if you say it had to go up 20% because of inflation, well, it's not 48%, John.
Well, it's a good thing we have the money because they can take longer. Doing the stretch on 103rd Street between Metcalf and Antioch, I think that's been 2 or 3 years now, right?
That has been a while in the making. Oh, gosh. Travis in Lenexa. What's up, Travis? You're on KCMO.
Yeah, hey, morning, Pete. I just wanted to caveat off of what Mark Hamill just talked about. There is a website out there for all the listeners to go to learn more about other issues within the county that's been researched by the grassroots individuals. So encourage everyone to go to takebackjoco.com. So once again, it's takebackjoco.com. And there's a survey or /quiz you can take at the top when you click on the button. And it can you can kind of voice some of your concerns and learn a lot more about the candidates and some of the other issues within the county.
I see it here. Yeah, county budget, it writes here, is more than $1.8 billion. They spend $2,940 each year for every person in Johnson County. Your Johnson County real estate taxes have doubled over the past 10 years. That's 3 times the rate of inflation. That's some good stuff on here.
Yeah,
I like
everyone
it.
to go. Yep.
Are
you
you
go out and take a look at it?
Are you in that second district where Mark Hamill is going to be running?
No, I am not. I'm actually in the district right below him. But I highly encourage everyone to go learn about the 3 candidates that are up right now to learn about Charlotte O'Hare, Mike Storm, and you just heard from Mark Hamill. Go learn about them. Go read. Go to that website. Take a look. And that is no affiliation with any of those candidates. This is just a site we stumbled across to learn more and some good quality research to learn more about what's going on within the county from a citizen standpoint.
All right. Thank you for that, Travis. And the site looks to be a good one as well. Just checking it out. You know, when I was down in Lynn County last week for their Sunflower Club, I was amazed at how many people are Johnson County transplants who got sick of the Johnson County nonsense and wanted to, yes, live a simpler life. No doubt about it. As one guy said to me, I feel like it's 1982 down here. That's cool. But it was also in large part because of the tax situation in Johnson County. Now, some have fled to Miami County, and some said, hey, that's not far enough. I'm going down to Lynn. So whatever your preference is, so be it. But it's pretty amazing when you think about it that people now are fleeing classic suburban counties that have oftentimes been considered some of the best places to live, not just in the region or the Midwest, but in America. And they're like, I'm done. I'm out. I don't want to afford it. Maybe I can't afford it. And there are other ways to live. And that's what you see happening right here in our backyard. So if you want to bring some common sense, you heard the names there from Travis. 6th District, you've got Mike Storm running. You have Charlotte O'Hara running for re-election in the 3rd District. And then you've got Mark Hamill running in that 2nd District, which is Shawnee and the northern parts of Lenexa. 913-408-7957. I'm trying to get a hold of our buddy Joe Piscopo from Saturday Night Live fame. He is now doing a radio show in New York, and I wanted to ask him and get his response to all the nonsense in the wake of Columbus Day yesterday, where, of course, it's getting called by some Indigenous Peoples Day. And what really annoyed me is yesterday I pulled open my Google Calendar just to see what I had lined up for the day. And, you know, that's how we keep track. Kate and I keep track of everything for the day, right? Mm-hmm. There's no more of this, like, My dad still uses like a handheld calendar. Like, he's got it lined up there in the house. It's like, no, everything's on here, Pops.
Dry erase board's popular.
Yeah. No, it's all on the phone. I got to look at it. I got to see when practices are and hair appointments are and the whole deal. So I'm looking at this yesterday, and the schedule's filled. Now, I had a lot going on yesterday. We had the event last night with Winsome Sears. But the first two things on my calendar, I put the U.S. holidays on here, and it's got Columbus Day, and then it's got Indigenous Peoples Day.
And you cannot dismiss those, can you?
Well,
Isn't that funny?
Well, that's the thing. I can't get rid of one. I can't get rid of one without getting rid of the other.
Oh, I can't get rid of either.
Well, I could get rid of all U.S. holidays on my calendar.
Oh, okay. Maybe try that.
I could do that thing where no U.S. holidays, but I like to see the holidays show up on my calendar.
A few of them sneak up on you.
Yeah. Well, I got Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. So my calendar looks like it's even more stacked than it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. You got 2 holidays. Who do you buy a card for here?
It's unreal. So with that being said, you had the Chiefs yesterday, and I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not bothered by this. They've got to play the game. You've got the Chiefs yesterday putting up a post on Instagram. No, there was nothing about Christopher Columbus. But they did put up a post for Indigenous Peoples Day, and they wrote here on the Chiefs Instagram page, every year on hashtag Indigenous Peoples Day, we acknowledge the incredible work that the American Indian Community Working Group continues to do with us. As always, thank you for helping us stay educated, educate our fans, and celebrate tribes with historic connections to our region. Now, listen, if I didn't know how Chiefs ownership felt and operated in general, I might be a little bit bothered by this, but I'm not at all. Because they have preserved the name. They have rejected all calls for canceling the name and canceling the chop and all these things that the Kansas City Star have been lobbying for years at this point. They basically have told their haters to pound sand. And for that, I have no issues whatsoever. That once in a while, they got to play the game. But it's funny when you look at some of the comments, most of the comments are like, great, but today's Christopher Columbus Day. That's the comment on the Chiefs account with the most likes. A lot of other people saying, you mean Columbus Day? It's Columbus Day. Other folks writing here, it's Columbus Day. Look into the Italian lynchings for actual history. And then some people on the other side are just getting so triggered by this. Some people are talking about Harrison Butker on the Chiefs Instagram page. One person writes, I'd love to hear Harrison Butker's take on Indigenous Peoples Day. Probably not much better than his opinions on women. It's like, imagine being...
got him.
Yeah.
Good comeback, Potsy.
Imagine being so triggered by a post that has nothing to do with Harrison Butker. He's not in the photo. It's a Native American tribal member standing in front of the drum there in the end zone. Imagine being so triggered by Harrison Butker that he's always in your mind, and then you leave a comment on a page of a photo that has nothing to do with Butker to call out Harrison Butker. People really need to pick up hobbies. That's the only conclusion I can come to here. 913-4087-957. We'll get to our caller of the day. I'm trying to get a hold of Joe Piscopo, but he just got off the air in New York for his radio show. Yesterday, I texted Joe. I said, hey, Joe, can you come on the show tomorrow, talk about some of the reactions to Columbus Day? And he writes back in all caps, Pete, I'm on a live parade broadcast. So he was there for the big Columbus Day parade, which I'm surprised they still let him do there in New York City. What do we have? Some breaking news in the sports world, Mark? Give it to me.
Yeah, it looks like Davante Adams from the Raiders is going from a 1-2-4 team to another, going to the Jets.
Wow.
Meeting up with his old pal Aaron Rodgers.
Davante Adams from the Raiders to the Jets. What did the Raiders get out of it?
Looks like a potential third-round pick, I'm guessing, if he plays out the rest of the game.
That's it? A third-round pick?
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. Man, the Raiders are a dumpster fire, huh?
So are the Jets. They both are.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Davante Adams to the Jets. The Jets lost that game last night to the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. I was too busy rooting on my Mets, who evened up the NLCS at 1 game apiece. Let's go. Woo! Let's go. Marco, you wear every sports team in the country around here. You can't wear a Mets shirt once in a while. Do you have one, or do I have to buy you one?
I don't have one. If you got a Mets hat, I'll wear it.
I don't have a hat. I got a shirt. I'm going to break it out this week.
Nice.
All right. There you go.